bizarre series of mysterious and grotesque deaths is dividing a community. The killings lack any sort of motive. But as the body count escalates, the race is on to get inside the mind of the killer. Before conflict explodes into carnage. Pilanesberg National Park, South Africa. 212 square miles of protected nature reserve, set aside as a safe haven for wildlife. Yet rhinos in the park were turning up dead, killed by injuries that just didn't make sense. The man who had been in charge of protecting them was field ecologist Gus Van Dyke.
We started finding dead rhinos, and the guys who were on the ground alerted us and said something's not right. When an animal's poached, it's got a bullet hole in it and the horn is gone. In Pilanesberg, all the rhinos that we found were still intact and their horns were largely untouched.
The bodies were all in one piece. Poachers weren't killing these animals. Something else was. Humans are the adult rhino's only predator. But male rhinos will fight one another. Adult males are fiercely territorial.
So it's perfectly natural to expect that rhinos will kill each other.
But something about the corpses just wasn't right. There were deep gashes behind the head where the animal had bled out. In some, the shoulder blades were smashed and the back was broken. Not the type of wound you'd find in a rhino attack.
The nature of the injuries was wrong. The injuries that we were seeing here were injuries on the top of the neck and down the spine. And really, there's no real way that in a rhino fight, those injuries are going to be sustained.
When rhinos fight each other, they lower their heads and try to gore their opponents with an upward thrust of their immense horn. Any wounds go below the shoulder into the underside of the head and belly. Yet the wounds on the dead Pilanesberg rhinos were on the neck and shoulders, and the blows had been inflicted downwards. Another rhinoceros could never reach that high.
This is not obviously rhino aggression. Something else is happening here.
Van Dyke was puzzled. If the blows were inflicted from above, it could only mean that the attacker was taller than the victim. But a fully grown rhino is over 1.5 meters high. What predator was taller than that? And what predator was powerful enough to take on 3 tons of fully grown male rhino? 1,700 miles to the north in Kenya, Amboseli National Park was also experiencing a spate of bizarre deaths. Only here, it wasn't rhinos that were turning up dead. It was cattle. Many were left with their intestines hanging out. For the third time in as many weeks, angry Maasai villagers had called out Soila Sayalau. Though she was a Maasai herself, it was a call she always dreamed. The Maasai swore that an elephant had killed a cow. As project manager, the Amboseli Trust for Elephants, Sayalau hoped that wasn't true. The Maasai were insistent. Sayalel recognized the footprints immediately as elephant tracks. 40 centimeters in diameter, the oval imprints were unmistakable. Like human fingerprints, the pattern of ridges left behind by the solid elephant actually quite distinct. But the sand here was too soft to leave an accurate impression. Sayalel and the Maasai men followed the tracks and soon found signs of a struggle. They had something else to show. When it attacks, an elephant's tusks make grooves in the earth. The marks are easy to spot. Around them, the red earth was stained crimson with blood. But why should elephants and cattle come into conflict at all? Like cattle, elephants eat only vegetation. They are not predators. And in the wet season, there is little competition for food. There was no obvious reason why an elephant would kill. Sayalel asked the Maasai to try and give her a description of any elephant spotted on the side of the sea. It seemed just one. The villagers weren't satisfied with paperwork. Cows are sacrosanct. They represent status, wealth, and the essence of Maasai. Unless someone was able to help them, they were take action themselves. April 1994. The number of dead rhinos in Pilanesberg National Park was continuing to escalate. The body count now stood at 21. Yet Gus Van Dyke was no nearer to finding their killer.
Frustratingly, we were still battling to build a complete picture because these rhinos were staggering around for a few days with their injuries and then dying. So we weren't able to piece the history together from the signs left on the ground.
Van Dyke was becoming increasingly concerned. But his luck was about to change.
We had an incident where we found 4 rhinos very quickly after each other in a very small area. And for the first time, we had fresh animals that we could look at and do proper post-mortems on.
For the first time, Van Dyke had an intact crime scene. He immediately called his trackers in to examine the evidence. Maybe at last they could build a complete picture of just what was happening. The 4 bodies were surrounded by elephant tracks. There were definite signs of aggression, scuffed footmarks, and broken branches.
And it was perfectly obvious that elephants were involved here.
The investigators carefully measured and photographed every trace. The rhinos and the elephants were clearly here at the same time. Fresh prints from both species intersected each other. Just like the ones in Amboseli, the prints measured around 40 centimeters across, giving a shoulder height of over 2.5 meters. Probably a large female or a juvenile male. For the first time too, the investigators had fresh injuries to examine. The shapes of the deep wounds were consistent with tusks over 1 meter long. At last, Van Dyke was hot on the trail. A 3-meter
without absolute idea of which elephant was responsible, we went to the closest elephants that we could find to that incident. And we shot them.
Van Dyke knew that the perpetrator wouldn't have travelled far from the scene of the crime. There was a good chance that one of these 3 elephants was his killer.
That came under some criticism to such a drastic step, but what we did see immediately after that is that the killing stopped. And once the killing stopped, we patted ourselves on the shoulder and said, okay, we've got it right. We don't know why or how. We thought we could move on with our rhino conservation.
Life in Pilanesberg returned to normal for just over a year.
Suddenly, we started seeing the very same pattern reappear. Had we shot the wrong elephant? We had no idea, but all we knew is we had more carcasses.
The Pilanesberg killer was back and busy. In quick succession, new rhino corpses began to pile up. March brought 3 dead bodies. April, 5 more. By the end of May, the total body count was 49.
From 1 carcass a month, perhaps now we're finding 1 a week.
There was growing pressure to find the killer before the already endangered rhinos vanished from Pilanesberg National Park altogether. But it was 2 whole years before the culprit was caught in the act. A tourist who heard news of deaths sent in photographs of an elephant in the park chasing a rhino. It is obvious to Van Dyke that the elephant is attacking.
This elephant, you can see, is absolutely focused on that rhino. His trunk's outstretched, he's crumpled up his ears. He's not trying to chase this rhino off or intimidate it. He's trying to catch it. And indeed, once he caught that animal, he killed it.
Once the elephant had caught the rhino, he gored it from above, straight into the shoulder blade.
Just pushing his tusks deep into the shoulders and breaking the back and the pelvis.
The elephant then used the weight of its head to crush the rhino, while driving its huge tusks through the body. The cause of death is clear, but a bigger question remained. Was this a single rogue animal that had somehow managed to escape detection? Or was it something deeper, affecting more than just one individual elephant? At Amboseli National Park in Kenya, elephant project manager Soila Sayalal was trying to answer the very same question. She has now recorded 185 more cattle deaths and collected dozens of eyewitness statements. Anywhere else, picking the culprit out of a lineup of more than 1,400 elephants would be difficult. But Amboseli's elephants are among the most studied in the world. Since 1972, the Amboseli Trust for Elephants has monitored the population's behavior, assembling identification records for each and every one of them.
We have 1,450 elephants, and all the elephants are known individually.
So Sayalel attempted to match the existing photo IDs with the eyewitness descriptions. In Pilanesberg, Gus Van Dyke was collating forensic photographs from the new rhino deaths. He identified something they all had in common. At every scene, there was just one set of elephant prints. Only males travel alone. But the footprints weren't big enough to belong to an adult. Yet the prints differed from kill to kill. The implications were enormous. Van Dyke wasn't looking for one killer. There were lots of them. In Kenya, the pattern was a very different one. All the attacks here involved families of elephants. Silel suspects appeared to be mature females. Were the situations in Amboseli and Pilanesberg completely unrelated? Females repeatedly killing cows in Kenya, males systematically killing rhinos in South Africa. Just what was going on in the minds of these elephants? Dr. Joyce Poole has been studying elephant behavior in Africa for more than 30 years. She is one of the world's leading elephant authorities and research director of the Amboseli Trust for Elephants. Dr. Poole had encountered elephant violence before.
I think it's much more aggravated now. We're seeing much more conflict, more aggressive, more violent sort of behavior on the part of elephants. So that's made us start thinking, what's going on here?
The Maasai continue to bear the brunt of this violence as more and more of their livestock are killed. Cattle are central to Maasai life. Their milk and blood is used for food. Their dung is used for plastering hut walls. So each death is keenly felt. Since 1997, the Amboseli Trust for Elephants has made consolation payments for lost livestock if the Maasai agree not to seek retribution. But in the past, they've taken matters into their own hands.
I suddenly heard in the background the sort of Maasai warrior call, and I thought, this is trouble.
An unknown elephant had killed a villager. The Maasai were after revenge.
When I went to get help, the Maasai crossed to the other side of the swamp and speared an elephant named Fenella.
The Maasai claimed they would spear 1,000 elephants. They speared 7. Fenella was one of the few survivors. The Maasai wanted to teach the elephants a lesson. In fact, they just made things worse. In Pilanesberg, Van Dyke was struggling with the rationale behind the rhino attacks.
Based on the tracks that had been found and just the nature of the injuries, the assumption was made that it was bull elephants. So we focused our attention on the bull elephant population of Pilanesberg.
It didn't help that very little was known about the Pilanesberg elephants. Most had been translocated from other parks in the 1980s.
Gus got in touch with me and asked if I could come down and have a look at what they were seeing and look at the statistics.
Dr. Poole suggested that Van Dyke try and piece together in-depth profiles of the Pilanesberg herd.
Work that had been done in Amboseli really highlighted the value of getting to know individual animals within a population.
So, drawing on what Poole and her team had learned in Amboseli, Van Dyke created independent profiles of every male elephant in the park to try and find those responsible.
It took a while, but we started building up a profile of each bull.
Each of the bull elephants was photographed and any identifiable markings recorded. As the data accumulated, one detail began to recur. All the attackers had something in common.
We started seeing a pattern, a very interesting pattern, and that is that the elephant bulls that were involved in aggressive encounters we're in fact in musth.
Musth is when male elephants go into a period of heightened aggression and sexual activity. The temporal glands behind their eyes become swollen, causing a strong-smelling fluid, rich in hormones, to run down their cheeks. The secretions are a signal to other males that he is ready to fight to the death if necessary, to preserve his status and mating rights over the females. Testosterone levels can be 20 times greater than normal, and even the most placid male can become aggressive. Usually, this occurs when elephants reach their mid to late 20s and have left their family group. These young bulls in Landsberg were only 18 years old.
Here was an animal that was in musth a full 10 years too early.
With this increased testosterone in their bloodstream, starting to behave aggressively.
We started seeing elephants that were more aggressive than one would expect, even if they were in musth. A low tolerance of vehicles, tourist vehicles, for example.
Violence was spilling over into other areas of the park. But the rhinos still seemed to be the principal target.
These elephant bulls would approach rhinos, not aggressively at first, but just walk up to them and drape their trunks over the rhino's shoulders.
The action is the beginning of a sexual approach. A male elephant attempting to mate with a male rhino.
It looked so like sexual behavior gone wrong.
Not surprisingly, the advances are rejected. The elephant becomes frustrated.
And then the whole interaction escalated. These elephants gored these rhinos to death.
It seemed that this extreme sexual and violent behavior was being caused by massive levels of testosterone. But these juveniles shouldn't have been in musth at all. Why was this hormone surge happening so early? The 12th of April, 2006. Inside Uganda's Queen Elizabeth National Park, the villagers of Katwe were working on their farms. Eli Assa was carrying vegetables home to his family after a long day. He didn't see the danger coming. Eli tried to outrun his attacker, but an elephant was faster than a man. Before Eli reached the end of the field, the elephant caught him. He was gored to death. His good friend, Emmanuel Moata, saw it all.
When we got here, the whole place was elephants everywhere.
He was dead, but then they continued to play with him, pulling him, just playing with him.
The elephants removed all of Eli's clothes.
I found they had stripped him of all his clothes and they had pulled out his intestines.
The entire elephant family surrounded the naked body, turning the corpse and covering it with dirt. This bizarre behavior continued for nearly an hour.
The park officials had to shoot in the air to scare off the elephants, and that's when we got the chance to pick up the dead body.
Uganda has experienced elephant violence before, but those attacks were mainly the result of human confrontation. surrounded Eli Asaf's tragic death were an omen of a much deeper and darker mystery within Queen Elizabeth National Park. Wildlife biologist Eve Abe knows the Ugandan elephants better than most. After a military coup, General Idi Amin seized power in Uganda.
So help me God.
He began a violent reign of terror. The East African country went into a permanent state of war. Elephants became just another casualty. Ugandan soldiers stormed into forests and game parks, killing them for meat and ivory.
This was not just shooting one elephant. It was like throwing hand grenades at family groups, mass destruction. This was war. This was total war against these animals. And they just hack the ivory and go.
A whole generation of older elephants was wiped out. With no matriarchs or mature bulls, elephant family structure was totally destroyed. 95% of the elephants where Abe worked were slaughtered. Those that remained were a generation of youngsters left to fend for themselves. But is there any mental trauma for the animals that have lived through this type of violence? After 50 years of rescuing orphaned baby elephants, Daphne Sheldrick believes that there is.
They've lost their elephant family, and family is very important to an orphaned elephant, as it is to an orphaned human.
Her experiences give an intriguing perspective on the elephant's psyche.
I think an elephant that's raised on its own is going to be very mentally disturbed because they're so dependent, so utterly dependent on the family for such a long time.
The calves behave differently from others their age. Their eyes are dull. They spend a lot of time on their own, and they are reluctant to play. Many of them have experienced violence.
Most of the orphans come to us in a pretty bad state. Physical problems and, of course, emotional problems as well.
Most show some type of insecurity or withdrawal.
When they first come in, they have difficulty sleeping. A lot of them wake up screaming at night. One little elephant that was very newborn actually managed a trumpet in his dream. Suddenly this full-blown trumpet happened in the night and was so unusual that I actually went out to see what was happening. And this little guy was fast asleep.
A shrill trumpet call is a distress signal. A distress signal a baby elephant should be incapable of making.
Normally they can't trumpet until they're about 6 months old.
Sheldrick believes the baby calf was reliving a traumatic event from its past.
They definitely have flashbacks and dreams.
Though we can't know what an elephant is thinking, the traumatic events they've lived through are all too easy to verify. Africa's national parks were set up to protect wildlife like the elephant. But often, it has been at the expense of local communities. The Maasai have inhabited East Africa since the 15th century. But when Amboseli was declared a national park in 1974, both they and their cattle were moved out. Enraged, they looked for a way to draw attention to their predicament. They attacked a single all that was precious to them. The African elephant. The elephant spearings were an effective protest against land loss, but may have started a violent cycle of retribution.
The idea of retaliation has been certainly been in my mind for a very long time. There have been so many stories where it would seem obvious that it's revenge.
Certainly, violent interaction between humans and elephants has escalated. Yet most of Joyce Poole believes the elephants recognize that the cows belong to the Maasai.
Some people have found it a leap even to suggest that elephants can make that association. But of course they can make that association.
The Amboseli case studies appear to support that connection. A significant majority of the female elephants known to have attacked Maasai cows have been victims of Maasai violence in the past. One such elephant is 38-year-old matriarch Odile.
A group of warriors mobilized themselves. They found Odile and her group in the swamp, and they started chasing them out. She tried to get hold of a Maasai, but when the other guys saw that, they went and she was speared 7 times.
Photographic evidence shows the extent of Odile's injuries. But what happened next was tragic.
Odile saw her calf being speared.
It did not survive. Sayalel and her team have noticed a definite change in Odile's behavior since the death of her baby.
She's not okay. She doesn't trust Maasai anymore. And all the time when you see her, she's nervous.
In the months that followed, Odile was implicated in the deaths of several Maasai cows.
So that's made us start thinking, is there some kind of connection between what the Maasai are doing to the elephants and the elephants' ability to understand that and to have a sort of payback?
The actions suggested that elephants could remember an emotional event from their past and then act upon it. For Sayalel, it is simply common sense.
I use the word revenge because, like you did this to me or you killed my calf, so I'm going to do this, I'm going to kill a cow.
The cow certainly made an easier target for the elephant's aggression.
They may feel that it's safer to pick on a cow that can't fight back, but at the same time still getting back at the Maasai. I don't know, are they that clever? I think they are.
Recent research into their cognitive capacities suggests that Poole is correct. Felicity de Zulueta is a consultant psychiatrist and the head of the Traumatic Stress Service at London's Maudsley Hospital. She believes that there are similarities between the minds of humans and the minds of elephants.
We share the same attachment system. We need these attachments to grow up, and we feel the loss of them, and we show the signs of grief. These are all attachment symptoms and signs. And why shouldn't elephants?
Soila Sayalel has seen indications of this sense of grief and loss. Elephants will literally stop in their tracks and acknowledge the bones of the dead.
it's one of the way that they mourn for the dead. And that's why they just go and touch the bones, trying to remember that one of us died here.
Certainly, this is not idle curiosity. Elephants will return to skeletons repeatedly, touching them with their trunks time and time again.
They seem to have some sort of understanding of death. They definitely distinguish between the bones of their own kind and the bones of others. They seem to have some rituals over death.
These rituals are very similar to the behaviors performed over the body of Eli Asaf in Uganda's Queen Elizabeth National Park.
When an elephant kills something, especially a person, they stand over the dead body. They cover it with dust, and they refuse to be moved.
They have fantastic memories. Those are all attachment signs.
Young elephants are reared in a close matriarchal society, with many complex layers of extended family. But this complexity is both a strength and a weakness.
Elephants are highly emotional, they're highly social, they're highly intelligent, they have this very complex network of relationships. And if you start to tamper with that, through culling, through poaching, through capturing babies, you start breaking down the fabric of that society.
And when that society breaks down, elephant behavior changes.
You can see these animals are on the alert. They have problems interacting. They're very aggressive, very out of control behaviors, which they just express as best they can.
Eve Abe believes this violence is a direct result of trauma.
Trauma turns elephants into being aggressive or being very violent. These are traumatized elephants. They don't know anything better. They block roads, they go out into villages, trample. All the elephants have just gone wild.
To psychiatrist Felicity Dezilueta, the symptoms sound very similar to a condition in humans called post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD.
PTSD is the reliving of a past event. In other words, it means that somewhere in your mind you have remembered that past event, you've put it to the back of your mind, or in a cupboard in your mind, as I say, and then, to your horror, it comes back.
Since 1980, post-traumatic stress has been officially recognized as a medical disorder in humans.
And now we are finding, surprise, surprise, that animals have the same symptoms as we do.
To suggest that elephants might be suffering in a similar way that we do, it didn't seem to me to be such a great leap.
These baby elephants wake up just like all my patients with nightmares at night. And this is one of the cardinal symptoms of PTSD, is nightmares at night.
But what could have affected these elephants so profoundly? The aftermath of trauma on both humans and elephants were disturbingly familiar to biologist Eve Abe. Her family were living in northern Uganda when Idi Amin came to power. Amin started an ethnic purge, beginning with Abe's tribe, the Acholi, who had supported his political opponents. He began by executing the elders.
During Amin's time, the males were selectively taken out. Can you imagine a whole family, a certain age group, of elders being wiped out. My dad's generation.
Their children were left to fend for themselves.
They form these roaming, violent, destructive bands. They are aggressive. And this is what trauma does. If you look at the adult male population, it's not there to teach these children how to behave. The way elephants live is the way humans live. Their characters and behavior mirrors that of human beings.
That survived on invasion are now fully grown. Elephants of Katwe. There was no rational reason why the elephants attacked Eli Asaf, but their irrationality might have been triggered by stress. Traumatized individuals were known to have an exaggerated startle response. Yet their reaction over Eli's dead body appeared to be one of regret, almost as if they knew they had done something wrong. The elephant populations of Queen Elizabeth National Park and Amboseli had both suffered a violent past. In Uganda, the atrocities of Idi Amin decimated the elephant population. In Amboseli, the Maasai protests over land rights began a cycle of violence. But what of the South African elephants who were attacking rhinos? It seems Pilanesberg too has a disturbing story to tell. In 1979, the park was created on land just a 2-hour drive northwest of Johannesburg. The intention was to stock it with wild animals from all over South Africa. It was called Operation Genesis.
It was a radical idea at the time to develop a wildlife reserve and bring back all the animals that were missing and then use those animals in a very positive way to develop the reserve and at the same time contribute to conservation.
Part of the plan was to relocate a number of elephants from Kruger National Park, following a planned population cull. But unfortunately, they were unable to move whole families.
At the time, the technology and the experience that existed didn't allow for the movement of large elephants.
So they didn't move the adults. They moved the babies.
So young elephants, elephants that are at the height of a man, could easily be caught and loaded up and moved en masse into the Pilanesberg and released into this area which hadn't seen elephants for perhaps 100 years.
The older elephants were darted with a paralyzing drug, then shot and butchered for their meat.
They butchered the mothers while the babies watched. And then tied them to dead mothers.
Tying the infants to the heavy corpses of their mothers prevented them from getting away. At the time, no one imagined that this might be making a deep impression on the orphaned witnesses.
I'm sure at the time this seemed like a perfectly natural and normal thing to do.
conservation team.
These live babies were then shipped off and left to fend for themselves.
The animals were driven over 300 miles, then released into a strange and unfamiliar habitat.
So they were all moved without any role models, without any adults, and basically just dumped in this national park. So these animals that are highly social and highly emotional have had quite a rough start in life, and we begin to see some of the consequences as they grow up.
For 13 peaceful years, the translocation appeared to have been successful. Then, the rhino killing began. Joyce Poole believes that the traumatic experiences had taken their toll.
These kind of events, I'm sure, are etched in their brains and have long-term impact on them.
The killing was done with the best of intentions. At the time, it was believed that actively controlling the size of the population was good for preserving the balance of the park. But De Zulueta believes that long-standing damage might have been done.
Traumatization is transmitted down generations unless somebody stops it, which is why you have actually traumatized societies where huge levels of violence exist amongst themselves as well as towards others.
Van Dyke was just pleased they got to the bottom of it.
To have an example so clearly illustrate what happens when these structures break down was just incredible. And to have the opportunity to be able to correct that and actually see that population recover was just an enormous privilege.
Gus Van Dyke was privileged enough to have the opportunity to repair some of the damage.
So I suggested what they do is to bring in some older males from Kruger.
Van Dyke had come to the same conclusion. By now, they had the technology to move big elephants, so they could bring in the adult bulls they needed. Although this treatment still looks rough, the elephant is suffering no real physical damage. And the ploy was immediately successful.
And it did stop the males coming into musth and may have also provided a sort of role model for these, if you want to call them hooligans.
It was very obvious that musth patterns changed immediately. In fact, from the day that the big bull elephants were reintroduced, not a single rhino was killed by an elephant thereafter.
The abnormal behaviors seem to have developed because humans had disrupted the elephant's social structures.
We have, as wildlife managers, been really messing about with elephants.
Dr. Poole believes the events have caused deep emotional repercussions.
Their suffering of post-traumatic stress disorder is probably something that has gone on for as long as elephants and people have been interacting.
It seems the motive for their violence lies with us.